5, 4, 3, 2.
This is HDLParm105.com.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Superintendent McGhee, the Superintendent of the Harperwood School District, and welcome to NGR, Next Generation Readiness. I have two special guests here, and Mr. Wayne Phillips and Mrs. Marilyn Little. Both are in the field of finance, finance consulting, and planning. Uh, as we move along in the context of this podcast, there will be multiple questions I'm going to ask, but I want Mrs. Little first because I'm a little bit more familiar with Mr. Phillips to kind of give us a background of how you got here, what inspired you to get here in terms of your financial background and your body of work.
Thank you for having me, first of all. Conservator Attendee Services is a guardian and conservatorship agency. So not only do we work with finances, we work with getting all of our clients' business, their assets, everything in order. Okay, once they are deemed incapacitated, then that's when we are appointed to assist them to get all of their affairs in order.
Yes, question. From a service offering percentage, do you find that within our community, do we generally have a larger or smaller contingency of individuals who participate in that process?
We have a very small percentage.
What do you attribute that to?
Knowledge. I would say knowledge. I don't think we want to step out of our comfort zone to try to do anything different, to try to help people differently. Once we get comfortable in doing what we know, then we kind of stick to it.
Okay. Also, we have here Mr. Wayne Phillips, and I'm looking back at the top, he said over 27 plus years of experience as a financial advisor and as an entrepreneur. I want you to kind of give me your background and body of work, and I'm going to kind of bring it back together on this opportunity bridge.
Okay, well, again, thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah.
Appreciate the invitation. I started out in 1996 as a financial advisor, and I wanted to become a stockbroker in high school. It was a high school econ project where you got to play money. And with this play money, I invested in some real stocks. And that's back in the day, you had to go down to the library physically. When there was no internet, you had to research through value times and just, real research back then. So I selected these 4 stocks and I made a lot of money, a lot of play money. So I said, let's do this for real. And I got the opportunity to become a stockbroker, but I learned financial planning was much more involved, much more comprehensive, and also much more beneficial for our folks.
In what grade did you discover the stock market?
4th grade.
12th grade.
4th grade at Renaissance High School.
Okay. So mind you, I'm asking all of these questions for a reason. About the conservatorship and the percentage of people of color who actually engage in that process, because I know the answer outside of our own scope. Of the stock market itself and being engaged into it and becoming more knowledgeable, I know that for a fact. So we're focused on now from the fall. It's a project called the Opportunity Bridge. We've shifted away from the achievement gap because the achievement gap deals with deficit thinking. The federal government and the state, they're pretty much funding failure because we continue to do education the way we've done it for the last 100 years. You can't open tomorrow's doors with yesterday's keys, and many times people believe that we can keep doing the same thing, the same old thing, we just got to do it better, as if it's going to shift something for children. When in actuality, you probably need to deviate from the old system and create something better, that's more engaging for children. So the Opportunity Bridge brings practitioners like yourself together with teachers that focus on the Common Core, infusing the Common Core, English, Math, Science, and Social Studies into the practitionership of finance, financial literacy, real estate, brokerage, across the board, whatever it happens to be from a certification and licensing standpoint. Because there are multiple careers that you can get certification and licensing without even touching the college campus that will allow you to live a middle class to an upper middle class. And if you're keen enough, that will shift you to the upper echelon. And exactly. So the premise is for the opportunity bridge is to start at elementary school, say in the fifth grade. We have meta now at the fifth grade, seventh grade, and ninth grade. All of those kids have their own business at this point. We're shifting their mindset from being a consumer to a producer, making money while they sleep. You have to start early with that. I think with the state, they say, well, we're going to just do some financial classes. Well, they'll just take the class and still do the same thing versus that are shifting their mindset. So with you all and yourself first, Mrs. Little, when did your mindset shift into what you're doing and it became your lifestyle?
Let me go back for a minute because what I'm doing now is not what I've always done. Okay, I actually started off in a factory. Okay, 32 years of lean management, and once I retired from the factory, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Okay, and I reinvented myself because I knew I wanted to do something and I knew I wanted to help people. Okay, I've always had a business. Okay, even while in the plant. Okay, but at the same time, I knew I didn't want to just retire. Okay, so after lean management, I did do some certifications, like you mentioned, to learn how to be a guardian and conservator through Wayne and Oakland counties. Okay, and just start learning the different avenues and trying to better myself to be the best guardian and or conservator possible.
Was there anything within your background or within your personal circle that pushed you toward that, or just that just happened to be the field you chose to serve?
It definitely was not the field I chose.
Okay.
It was not. Actually, I was going to go into group homes once I retired. And a friend, neighbor, thought, maybe you should try this, because you're always helping people, right? So maybe you should try this, okay, and see what you think. So I actually went to a convention, a conference, and what pulled me in was the information that they was giving us to use to help the clients is actually information we need for ourselves to help us get our business in order, okay? And that's what really sucked me in.
I know, in just listening to the news, I've heard it multiple times that literally conservatorship, that not just that market, but that of the elderly, with people living longer, that entire market is taken off completely. And many times, especially in communities of color, it's we just find ourselves people just staying at home, without taking the appropriate steps for that longevity, medical, or the assurance of a quality lifestyle on the other end. What I say is an old football analogy in the fourth quarter of your life. From 0 to 25 the first quarter, 26 to 50 second quarter. You got the halftime piece at 50. You kind of trying to decide, readjust, shifting. Then of course you move into the third quarter, and that's that 51 to 75. And if you're fortunate enough to get out of 76 to 100, that and making the appropriate, taking the appropriate actionable steps. But that kind of leads back into Mr. Phillips. So I'm looking at all of these bullets here. Estate planning strategies, retirement, wealth preservation, executive compensation, benefit strategies, family finance, charitable giving, insurance. Everything here has all to do with capitalism.
It does.
And it's crazy. And I've been saying this, is sounding this alarm for the last 6 months. We never hear education and capitalism mentioned in the same sentence.
And they should be.
And mind you, like from here on out, everybody that I talk to is just, that's what it's going to be. Because anything other than that, you're setting our children up for failure, and they're going to work to the day that they die. Versus that of living in their own purpose and being financially secure. And it shifting from the achievement gap, which is the deficit. Okay, you're not primary, so you have to be second or third. Versus that of opportunity and being taught early and then being able to live in your purpose. So all of these areas here, like, and I'll go with, I'm not going to pick one, but, because you're the expert in this, out of all the areas that you have here, which one do you spend the most time in, or are they all interlinked?
Um, they're all interlinked. I mean, because in order to prepare a comprehensive financial plan for a client, you've got to address all of those areas.
Mhm.
You've got to address wealth building, you've got to address wealth management, you've got to address distribution, you've got to address estate planning. Ultimately, if I do my job right, um, then that's what Mrs. Little does is a whole lot easier because everything's listed out in terms of what the person wants and the direction that they should go. One of the things I want to back up just a little bit though, and circle back to what you mentioned previously in terms of we got to create the entrepreneurial spirit within our children. We have to make sure that we're not raising them to be employees.
And that's it. You know what if they say that in terms of that we would rather raise children than repair broken adults.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're doing now. We are in generations before Black Bottom, before the Harlem Renaissance, in that time frame where we had our own dollar that was circulating within the communities of color, that literally we have reverted. You say the Freakonomics by 2015 that the African American community could be relegated to a level just above slavery because they have zero economics.
Mm-hmm.
We own nothing. So we work, even within the context of this educational conversation, we are like grains of sand on the beach, versus that of being an entire beach, galvanized together, moving in a congruent direction. Our households are different, but understand some of our goals are similar. No one wants to work to the day that they die. No one wants to be without a conservatorship, mind you, and going from hand to foot, not knowing what the next day will look like, and right now, that's kind of where we are, and that's the piece for me as an educator that I'm trying to alleviate with this next generation of children, because mind you, whether we teach it or not, they're going out into the world.
They are.
Yeah.
And you mentioned where I spend the most of my time is on education. Because if a client comes to see me, typically they have very little knowledge about how the investment world works, very little knowledge about insurance and really how it really works, other than saying, hey, well, I know I need something in case I die or take care of the kids, but they don't look at it as generational wealth building. They miss that aspect of it. They have very little ideas about estate planning. So as a community, we just aren't taught these things. So most of my time is spent on education. And then once the more I educate them, the more comfortable they get with investment strategies. It's hard to start talking about investment strategies when you don't know the basics of budgeting.
Yeah. I was talking to my CAO, Dr. Carruthers, and this is not an official term, but we talked about a line of mediocrity. That's the division line. Below the division line is descender learning. Descender and ascender. Ascender is that you've reached a point in your life and you learn skill sets that will allow you to live a lifestyle that will take you to that middle class or beyond. That line of mediocrity, everything below that is where most of our community starts at. And it takes so much time to get caught up. And by the time you get caught up, you're just at a line of mediocrity, just average. and it's taken half a lifetime. Okay, and within the context of that, our children are watching. So you begin to almost cap them out. But have they entered into the process at mediocrity and then ascended to ascender? Because I firmly believe that our children begin where we end, you know? And that's the premise of why it's so important that our educational system begins to shift, you know, because I know there's a teacher shortage. The world knows that, you know. But what do we incorporate into our systems to help perpetuate English, math, science, and social studies where it becomes engaging? Because right now it's not. It's not. It doesn't matter, you know, what you do, you know. So that's for me. That's where the practitioners come in at, you know, and being able to engage children more so than anything else. What we didn't touch on was in here as well. What is your educational background?
I graduated from Davenport University with a bachelor's in public administration and a master's in business administration.
Did you do that before the first career or in the middle?
During.
During? Okay. Okay.
During.
Great. Okay.
So I mean, they paid for my education.
There you go.
They did.
Yeah, and I think that's a part of it. You know, there's an argument between that of W.E.B. Du Bois and the talented 10th and George Washington Carver that deals with the other 90% when we're talking about building from the from the lower class to the middle class and the middle class out and up. You know, so if you're going off to college and you at that educational acumen, that if a corporation is going to pay for it, yes. If you have a scholarship, yes.
Absolutely.
But do you put yourself in a position to be in $100,000 worth of debt once you finish your 4 years or 5 years and you spend the next 30 or 40 years trying to come out of it? You know, that's a conversation.
That's a real conversation.
Yeah.
And the value of money sometimes might say no to that. Because if you look at, as we spoke on earlier, money is what makes the world go round in terms of capitalism. And if you're putting yourself in a negative position starting out, they talked about that mediocrity, you know, how long does it take you to get to that level when you're $100,000 in debt? You know, or you say, hey, well, you know, if I understand the value of dollars and the value of money and compounding interest, what happens if I just save $200 a month from any standard average day job? Yeah, I mean, any job. I mean, I think almost anybody can save $200 a month if they really try.
Yeah.
And you do that just for a matter of 20, 25 years, you're a millionaire. It doesn't really take a lot to become a millionaire. It just takes dedication and consistency and saving. You know, so if that's the objective, because $1 million today is not what it was 10 years ago, but still $1 million.
Right.
I think people who are millionaires still enjoy being called that.
Right.
And those who are not wish they were.
Right. Right. No doubt. Exactly. So what do you think about, it's two things I want to allude to. Where do you think we are now in terms of finance with the American dollar? And I keep hearing a lot of things, you know, from the BRIC countries. So you're talking about Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and South Africa. And they all talking about shifting from the American dollar. Have you been privy to that, or do you know?
That talk has been going around for decades. We all know the American dollar used to be based upon the gold system, which it hasn't been in quite some time. Right now, the American dollar is just based upon faith. I mean, literally, it really is based upon faith in the system. And with America's stature in the world as it is, will that go away? No, it won't.
Okay.
You know, realistically, there'll always be that talk about the BRIC companies trying to increase their status. You know, the dollar trades up and down, and, you know, currency trading is one form of investing. But in terms of the dollar going away, I think there will be a lot more disastrous things going on in our economy and the world to make that happen.
What do you think about the Chinese that they are investing more so in Africa now than in previous years? I think, for China has risen, it's the land of the rising sun. That's kind of running it back. But for the last, I would say the last 30 years, because 30 years ago, they were not considered a superpower. They weren't even on the map. And now they are. So what do you think about their rise in the market and how they've been able to re-juxtapose their position, in the world now?
Well, you know, getting very philosophical, and I love these conversations because what's the richest country in the world? Has the most resources in the world? Africa. So anybody with, any bit of sense will say, hey, that's where you need to invest your resources at. The most resources are in Africa. The question then becomes, why aren't we as a community investing our dollars in Africa? What are we doing? Why aren't we coming together collectively to make sure our dollar circulates around the community? And there's some books available where it's talks about certain communities, their dollar circulates up to 21 times before it leaves the community, versus in the African American community, it might get around 1.5 times at best. I mean, barely it gets in our hands and it's gone. So until as a collective, we learn to invest in each other, we learn to support each other, we learn to build our communities, and then go back and look at where the most resources are. We will be talking about other countries and what they're doing versus what can we do to uplift ourselves. And China is, if China can make itself a world power in a 30-year period,
Yes.
what can we do in 30 years if we collectively come together? Maybe not necessarily be a world power, but we'll be a community to reckon with in the economy, in the world, both locally and globally.
And I firmly believe that it starts with the least of us, the children.
Absolutely.
That's the piece of planting seeds of proper choice and success. And I tell anybody, oh, what do you do? I say, I educate tomorrow today. My thing is what are we educating them with? Are we preparing them for what's next, even the day after tomorrow? And that becomes the fight because it's comfortable. People are comfortable right now versus that of preparing children for what's next. And that's my continuous fight more so than anything else. Back to you now. So, in the gist of all these things that I was kind of going back and forth with, with conservatorship, there's a question. What age? Is there an age, or what is the best time to start that process of preparation for that?
Actually, your parents should actually start the foundation for you, I think. Okay? That way, once you become of age, it's better for them to start explaining to you, so that when you start your job, you, like Mr. Phillips said, you already know I need to invest something, or I either need to talk to somebody that can help me invest. So if the parents start you off, okay, it becomes a better road for you. Okay, and you're asking about conservatorship. I mean, it's easier when the parents start, because conservatorship really starts at $50,000.
Okay. So, just thinking, I remember sitting with the insurance agent from Prudential when I came home from the Pentagon. I think I was about 21 or 22. And both my parents were at the table. They were putting the insurance policy together. I never forget, her name was Badia Shaw. And so what are you going to do? And I think my dad did this. I think I decided something like, it was like $28 or something like that, but I kept it going all the way up to where we are now, so I thoroughly understand that it has to be passed on. I think more so in our community, it's like, I remember when my favorite uncle passed in Alabama when we were down there passing the hat, you know, and that's just not it. Not at all. You know.
Yeah, they do GoFundMe instead of passing the hat.
Yeah, that's right. Look here, there's so many different ways. But you know, the thing is like if you prepare children, not saying that those avenues are going to go away completely, but I think if we make a concentrated effort as a people, because now we're knowledgeable. It's not like we don't know now.
That's correct.
Right now, it's like we have to get out of our own way, you know, and being comfortable or just not being in that mindset of being planners and providers. You know, it's one way to provide the basics. This is another thing, talking about legacy and things of that nature, you know. And I think that's the mindset that we have to get into.
I'll share a story.
Yeah.
And this was on that same thing. One of my very first clients. I was down, office was down on Jefferson and Parker Street. And a young couple from Grosse Pointe had come in, and the wife was pregnant. And one of their objectives and financial goals was college planning. And I said, you know, silly me. I said, that's so good that you're starting to plan for your child and the baby's not even born yet. You know, because where I grew up at, you know, that they would be way ahead of the curve.
Right.
And they corrected me though. They were not doing college planning for their child. Their child's college education was already taken care of. They were planning for their grandchildren.
Yeah.
You know, and that story just resonates with me 27 years later in terms of how much we have to do to catch up.
Yeah.
How far we're behind.
It's a 400-year curve. I can't put it any other way. It really is. You know. Yeah. Yeah. The legacy portion of this is it's like it's pivotal in this, and I think a lot of times, folks just sometimes they're just selfish. I think that's a part of it too. You be knowledgeable, you know, but then when you become knowledgeable and you don't make a move,
That's right.
you know, that becomes a little selfish. You know,
I got mine, you can get yours.
right? You know, and
Instead of helping out.
right, and that's the thing. That's what's being said outside of us. Just pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Well, guess what? If you started with descender from a descender plane, you have to actually fill in all those gaps before you get to mediocrity. You know, and that's where the adjustment is. You know, more so than anything else. So now we're exactly right. I think for me, what I mentioned to you at the beginning, you know, I want you to think about relocating. That's all I got to say. And that's a different conversation, but I can show you the location for sure, you know, as well. Do you all have any questions of me as a superintendent or, you know, from an educational standpoint? I'm doing a lot of talking.
Mr. President?
I really didn't have a question, but I just did want to make a comment on. I did love the invitation, and part of the invitation to attend today was ignite the potential in every student. You know, that kind of resonated in terms of how important that is, because if we don't find that passion that's within them, then you know that's half the battle.
And that's the piece. It's like everyone has purpose. Within the context of a purpose, you have to help them find their passion. There's so many layers to this, and that deals with that descender knowledge piece, because it seems as if there's been so many layers placed over our community. It's just layers there. Once you get past one, you got to get past the other, you know, and just so our kids, and they begin where we end. They should not have to go through the same processes that we went through. I can't put it any other way, but we as adults have to have enough courage to put those actionable steps in place. So for me as a superintendent, I know what my lane is. You know, I know what my legacy will be. It will be that in the field of education, just how deep will I dig, you know, and yours, of course, finance and yours in your area as well. So, but we kind of have to like collectively, come together because I can't do it alone, and we can get much more done if we do this collectively together, more so than anything else. Any questions?
No, I don't have any questions right now. Again, thanks for inviting me to participate in whatever we can do, conservator attendee services to help enrich the children. We're available.
We're building this network of well, opportunity bridge. Real estate agents, brokers, financial consultants across the board, and the premise is to have those practitioners to collaborate with our common core teachers. So in every field that we have under practitionership, there's an English, math, science, and social studies component. What is it that we identify with the Michigan State standard, with the Common Core standards for English, for math, for science. So for instance, math, algebra, there's 70 standards. How do we cover all 70 of those standards of algebra for the ninth grade in finance? Okay, that becomes an intelligible conversation with a math teacher and someone in the field of finance, so like yourselves, and begin to align those skill sets. And then after you align those skill sets, what are the actionable steps that will teach those kids those skills? Then after we do the alignment of the actionable steps, what are the transferable skills that they learn, and then they go out and carry it out. So a great example will be we have construction trades. If they build small homes and container homes, the kids that are in real estate, they sell those homes, okay, or show those homes. Kids in finance, they actually get financing for those. That's full circle. What does that look like from an English standpoint and writing, a math standpoint, and that of say of science and that of history itself and social studies? And they're all covered. It's just a different way of thinking about education that allows for an incentive, a benefit, and then your passion, more so than anything else. And you can kind of decide what you want to do. Am I going to go to college? Okay, whatever it is. But I have these other things that I can do. So I want to thank you both. Thank you for taking your time out, and we're signing off now. Stephen McGhee, Superintendent of School, NGR, Next Generation Readiness.